Prior to his official retirement from the Uganda People's Defence Forces UPDF, the Director of Public Prosecutions of the Army dropped charges against the former Inspector General of Police, General Kayihura. The General Court Martial, presided over by Chairman Brigadier General Freeman Robert Mugabe, immediately discontinued all the charges against General Kayihura.
Lore Presequi from the Director of Prosecutions. The state has withdrawn the case and you are accordingly set free. I wish you all the best, General.
In an exclusive interview, we explore circumstances under which the DPP's Office of the Army can drop charges against the accused in a continuous case.
Ordinarily, any prosecutor would have that right to withdraw a charge against an accused, depending on some circumstances. After carrying out investigation, the prosecutor might find that he or she does not have sufficient evidence to present to the court. In such a case, then the prosecutor would wish to drop the charges.
Charges are dropped when the DPP does not have the evidence to sustain the charges preferred against a person. The DPP is simply saying, I do not have the evidence to sustain a conviction. That is ordinarily what happens. But we've seen charges, for example, those in the military courts, which are at the whims of the commander-in-chief. Even still, if the prosecution feels that they don't have sufficient information or evidence to sustain that charge, they are free to withdraw charges.
So essentially, the most important thing normally is not being able to have sufficient evidence, or witnesses who were available at that time are no longer available, so that he cannot present the case to the court martial. Those are the kind of reasons why a prosecutor would withdraw a case. He cannot present the case because of either evidence or witnesses, or exhibits have got lost.
But we also have matters which we've seen to be politically instigated. And what has taken those charges to be withdrawn is a political decision not to continue with the charges. Withdrawal of charges means the prosecution is not willing, with or without evidence, is not willing to continue with the charges, so they discontinue charges.
In the General Court Martial, General Kayihura was facing charges of failure to protect war materials, aiding kidnap, among other offences, and was waiting prosecution since 2018.
The laws work, but it's a governance issue. The institution, we need to check the institution. Is it in proper hands? The laws, I think, are sufficient, but the issue is the people that be. Are they free from manipulation? Is the DPP free from influence from the political arm or ruling government?
It is also in the interest of Kayihura himself that this thing doesn't keep hanging on his head, that he walks with his head up, that when he's walking, people are not turning and saying, oh, kidnapper. It is also in his interest to insist for the state to say, you guys, you brought me here unfairly, give me good reasons. Not just drop judges and you leave me with the people still thinking,
I believe so. I believe it was worth it. Because if you cannot start a prosecution since he was charged, it was worth it. Because it's also unconstitutional. It infringed his rights, actually. This trial was infringing on the rights of General Kayihura and his co-accused to a speedy trial. When it comes to rights, for me, it does not matter whether it's General Kayihura or it's other people languishing in prisons. One of the most abused constitutional provisions is the right to a speedy trial. And without a speedy trial, you cannot have a fair trial. I think that is where we need to look. I think that office is being abused. That prerogative of withdrawing charges is being abused by the office of the DPP. Of course, it's simply now at the whims or at the interest or willingness of the DPP whether to continue or not to continue with charges.
However, legal minds have reservations about the prosecution process in which criminal charges were dropped from General Kayihura.
I am uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because an Inspector General of Police, that is a very high office. It is even a constitutional office. Being a constitutional office, being such a high office of high responsibility, it is necessary for us to know what really is happening. His Inspector General of Police is not an ordinary man. The charges which were laid against the Inspector General of Police were serious charges.
It tells a lot why we've always said, especially civilians, should not be tried in that court, because the motivation there is not that someone committed a crime, but that someone is a political opponent. I would not be surprised if Kayihura, for example, did not commit the crimes that were leveled against him. That's why I'm not very fast to say actually that he committed them. If it is the politics that took General Kayihura to the court-martial, then it is the politics that released General Kayihura from that court-martial.
If somebody is running away, if somebody is running away from his country for fear and is a refugee in Uganda, to say that the Inspector General of Police repatriated that person against that person's will to go to a place he or she was running away from for fear of his or her life is a very grave accusation. To say that the Inspector General of Police has failed to keep account of guns and ammunition and that they have ended up in the hands of criminal gangs is very frightening.
The legal experts have described the move as a failure of justice to the accused, Ugandans and the country at large, with capital offences he was facing.
I believe the particulars in the offence is that people who are not supposed to handle guns freely accessed guns during his reign as the IGP. People who are not supposed to put on police uniform managed to put on police uniform and probably rob people and probably kill people using the guns. If these are the particulars of the offense that was charged as against him, then it is very absurd. But as a lawyer, I know that he is innocent until we prove such particulars of facts laid as against him. You serve remand period of 10 years before trial, or you even if you're on bail, you continue going to court for say 5 years, 6 years without trial, when the Constitution says there should be a speedy trial. It also proves that charges are leveled, trials are started without concluding investigations.
I don't think Ugandans have got justice in the dropping of charges. Justice would be either an acquittal for Kayihura or a conviction. And surely the charges, as I've indicated, are grave. Ugandans woke up to be told that the Inspector General of Police had failed to keep guns and bullets safely, he had failed to account for them. Some of them had found their way in criminal hands. Obviously, for Ugandans to feel justice would be for all this to have come out. And then they would say, yes, if he did it, let him be convicted. If he didn't, let him be acquitted. That is the only way Uganda would have justice, a full trial, not a dropping of charges. That is not justice for Uganda.
Are we seeing politics playing part in Kayihura's case and the way that this case has been handled since its inception in court?
I see elements of politics in this prosecution. First and foremost, look at the years which have passed without prosecuting the man. Justice delayed is justice denied.
So my request is, why don't you let him be the one to... No, I see. Okay, since you are insisting, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of the media, and I'm extremely happy, so there is no harm in at least, first of all, telling you that I'm extremely, extremely happy. I've never been this happy because I've got justice and I've got freedom. And it's not the kind of freedom that you have. This is sweet freedom. Sweet freedom. You can't imagine. You only appreciate freedom when you lose it. That's when you appreciate how valuable it is. So I'm extremely happy. On behalf of my family and all those who have stood with us, including Bagal. Bagal came to see me at the farm to console me. I want to appreciate His Excellency the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the UPDF for this freedom, that at long last I've got justice and freedom. I want to appreciate the court, the General Court Marshal, the chairman and the members of the court martial, the officers of court who made this all happen. I never lost confidence that I would get justice from this court. I want to thank the UPDF leadership. I want to thank all those up to the escorts who kept protected me. I want to thank our friends. I could go on and on.
However, experts on legal matters say withdrawing charges against someone doesn't in any way free a suspect.
That is why I don't think, in as much as he sings songs of freedom, I don't see General Kayihura a free man. The rope is still hanging around his neck. When charges are dropped, does it not mean they cannot be reinstituted? Anytime I see a prisoner who will work at the whims of the one who had placed charges against him, the only freedom General Kayihura would have got, and to the satisfaction of Ugandans, is if he obtained an acquittal. If he was acquitted, then that is the freedom. But a DPP is at liberty. Or the President Museveni now is still at liberty to ensure that the charges are reopened or reinstituted because he is not acquitted. So that rope will keep hanging around his neck. He's still a prisoner.
Yes, it is possible. It is a constitutional issue. It is a constitutional right. It is Article 120. Although Article 120 allows the DPP to take over prosecution from instituted by any other person or authority, it means that any other person has a constitutional right to do so. So somebody can come up. Whether, how far that person will go before the Director of Public Prosecution jumps in to take over prosecution and then terminate is a different question. But to answer your question directly, yes. Somebody can bring a private prosecution.
It's alleged that the charges of failure to protect war materials was penning the accused for letting war materials into the hands of the civilians and non-authorized people. If in any way cases are dropped against the suspect, does it mean that one has a right to file a suit against government or any other complainant?
He can sue in the civil courts for unlawful arrest, false imprisonment, detention, malicious prosecution, and tell the court, look here, these guys had nothing, it was all political, they just wanted to malice me. He brings his evidence, the Attorney General will bring his evidence, the court will look at it, and then the court can say, yes, on the balance of probabilities, not like a criminal cases where it is beyond a reasonable doubt, but on the balance of probabilities, you were harmed by the state. I award you damages, 700 million. In fact, if I was him, I would do that. I wouldn't be satisfied with just dropping these charges and keeping quiet. I would do that. I would go to clean up my name to say, you cannot do this to me.
If he believes, if he honestly believes, being a lawyer, that actually he had no charges worthy a name before that court, I await to see him. Then he'll at least prove to us that he believes there was no case against him. Because as a lawyer, I believe he knows that he has a right now to file. But as I told you, dropping charges does not mean they cannot be reinstituted. It is also a bit dicey. He may have to be careful. Because I insist, they are dropped. They are not dead.
On several occasions, the DPP's office in Civil Courts and Court Martial has been seen withdrawing charges from the suspects. Samuel Muyezi says such actions of DPP's office prompts Ugandans to lose trust in government institutions.
Some of these issues expose the weaknesses of the institutions of government. The biggest problem that the country is facing now is that authority is in individuals, not in institutions. If you go to the institution of the presidency, the authority is vested in the hands of the one occupying that first office of the president. When you go to parliament, you establish that actually instead of the institution of parliament having the authority, it vests in the hands of the person occupying that seat, that even when she's opening her private house, all members of parliament have to go on a private function. That shows how much authority is vested in the hands of people, but not institutions. When you go to the DPP's office, you establish that a lot of power is not in the institution on whether the charges so preferred are worthy prosecuting, but at the whims of the resident state attorneys and the DPP, that if one morning the DPP so wishes, a charge can be dropped on that DPP's own whims, just like we've seen charges being dropped as against or in favor of people who have been on remand for years, people who have been going to courts every other day.
Lawlessness in the country has taken root. Do not restrict rule of law to the release of Kayihura. Look at rule of law in the context of the whole country. There is such lawlessness that you can't restrict it to only this case. It's happening all over. So if you want to address it, if you want to address the rule of law, do not address it through Kayihura's case. Address it through all institutions of Uganda.
So what does it state? Before you even do that, the implication is very clear. You are saying, I am not capable of performing my duties. I'm incompetent. A very big incompetent word of incompetent is what is written on the face of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions officials who dropped the charges. They are simply saying we could sustain a charge against a person that we cannot convict, that we do not have evidence even to sustain a charge for which we have kept a person in courts for so many years. So this is across board. We need to revamp the way government is managed in as far as the institutions of government are concerned. And that is where the problem is. Structural changes. Ours is a demand for structural changes and improvement. And this may even go, the laws actually are okay, but we may need to change the spirit in which these laws are done, so that when you go to the IGG, it is as if it's not an institution.
General Kayihura was facing prosecution in the General Court Martial since 2018. However, no witness was brought to court, not until Wednesday this week, when prosecution withdrew all the charges against him.